government.
Blackman.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. That last speech just demonstrates what I've always believed, that the Liberal Democrats will say one thing to one person and completely the opposite to other people. Can I welcome the measures that were included in the Chancellor's budget which pertain to local government spending? First, of course, the additional funding for adult social care of £1.6 billion a year. The reality is that, of course, most of the people that work in adult social care are on the lowest possible wages. So the increase in wages they will receive, the opportunity to earn more money, has got to be good news, and I'm glad the government is funding it appropriately. However, I do think it's important that the government do spell out the full detail of how adult social care will be funded in the future, not just for this year, but for the years ahead. And I think that's vital. Equally, we know that under the pandemic, the position has been that large numbers of people, the estimate is 300,000 people who are renting privately, are in serious arrears and at risk of losing their homes. So the key here is, of course, the funding programme for housing, particularly the affordable housing programme. I'm delighted that we'll see 1 million new homes created. I hope that it's 1 million new houses instead of multi-storey high-density flats that are unacceptable for people who have families to live in. And I think that's vitally important. Equally, I want to see the government build 100,000 new homes for social rent so that people can actually afford the rent rather than being reliant on benefits. But the corollary with that is we should reboot the right to buy, to give people, when they move into those homes, the opportunity to buy the homes at the price it would be on the day they move in, however long it takes them to be able to afford to buy their own home. Equally, I think the government is to be commended for the work on combating rough sleeping. The programme of Everyone In was a remarkable achievement, and what we must do is make sure we build on that and end rough sleeping for good by 2024, which is, after all, the government's commitment. Equally, as I've said, Housing First needs to be funded and it needs to be rolled out right across the UK, because the reality is that every case of homelessness is unique and everyone will need particular help and guidance. Some people just need a pointer in the right direction. Others need a network of help and support to help them rebuild their lives. I also welcome the confirmation of the £5 billion for replacing unsafe cladding. However, can I remind ministers that there was a promise not only of the £5 billion, but the details of the forced loan scheme that was going to be put on those people that are in the low-rise blocks, and still we've had no answer from the Chancellor as to how that funding is going to be made, or the conditions that will be imposed, or indeed the mechanism by which it will take place. So whilst the funding is welcome, and indeed the tax on developers is welcome, it won't raise sufficient money to combat the amount of money that's having to be paid out. And equally, there is still the challenge that people face of receiving huge bills for the replacement of unsafe cladding, and a huge backlog still of that work to be done. Can I raise two other issues before I sit down, Madam Deputy Speaker? The first is my disappointment that still, after much lobbying, the Chancellor is still not seen to put right the long-term problem of funding Equitable Life policyholders who still are owed more than £2.8 billion. This issue is not going to go away. We'll campaign for it until such time as the Chancellor comes up with the money that was promised in the first place. Finally, I will just mention the one tax which is extremely welcome that was increased in the budget. That's the tax on tobacco. Often we don't hear that announced from the dispatch box. I'm glad that the Chancellor went there and increased the tax and carried on with the escalator. The fact is that smoking-related diseases cost the NHS £2.6 billion a year, and equally for the care budgets, £1.2 billion. I would like to see a levy put on the profits of the tobacco companies and then the money put into smoking cessation services. That would be a welcome tax, and we could do so because we're now outside the European Union and we would not have to pass that tax on to the smokers, but we would actually hit the profits of the big tobacco companies.
So, what with interventions and points of order,